You got all those books, the Bible, you've got the different Gospels and stuff that people are quite familiar with. Half the time, they didn't even need to read the subtitles. They could look at it and know what was going on.
The cross was just the beginning. While the world spent 2 decades obsessing over the final breath of a carpenter in Roman Judea, Mel Gibson was quietly excavating a story far more explosive. He isn't just filming a sequel, he's resurrecting a cosmic war.
This is a rare Ethiopian Orthodox Bible manuscript, handwritten in Ethiopia's sacred liturgical language, Ge'ez. It's 52 leaves, 102 pages carefully preserved.
Hidden within the 81 books of the Ethiopian Bible. Forget the Sunday school version you know. We are diving into a realm of fallen angels, ancient giants, and a Messiah who didn't just die, he went to war. The 81-book secret. The standard Bible sitting on most nightstands across the Western world is a trimmed-down, polished version of a much older, far more expansive library. While the Roman Catholic and Protestant traditions eventually settled on 73 and 66 books respectively, the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church never got the memo, or rather, they chose to ignore the editors. They preserved a broader canon consisting of 81 books, a literary fortress that remained untouched by the political purges of the early European councils. This isn't just a collection of different stories, it is the director's cut of divinity. In the high-altitude, cloud-shrouded monasteries of Lake Tana, texts like the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees aren't considered apocryphal curiosities or historical footnotes. They are foundational, living scripture. These books provide the essential connective tissue between the physical world we inhabit and the supernatural machinery grinding behind the scenes. While Western theologians were busy debating the nature of the Trinity or the logistics of the Reformation, Ethiopian scribes were hand-copying accounts of the Watchers, angelic beings who descended to earth, defied the Creator, and birthed a lineage of giants known as the Nephilim. This isn't just flavor text or ancient folklore. It fundamentally shifts the entire perspective of the New Testament. When the Ethiopian Bible describes the life and purpose of Jesus, it frames his mission not just as a legal transaction for human sin or a moral teaching moment, but as a direct, aggressive assault on the dark principalities that had hijacked the planet since the days of Noah. The West focused on the cross as a place of sacrifice and quiet submission. The Ethiopian texts view it as the opening salvo in a cosmic counteroffensive designed to dismantle an illegal occupation of Earth. It is this specific, ancient, and high-octane worldview that has reportedly captured Mel Gibson's imagination. By looking to the East African tradition, Gibson is tapping into a version of Christianity that is more Middle Earth than Middle America. It is a world where the veil between dimensions is paper-thin, where demons have names and hierarchies, and the stakes of the gospel are measured in eons and celestial bloodlines rather than just Sunday morning attendance. The Ethiopian Church's geographical and political isolation allowed it to act as a spiritual time capsule. It shielded these visceral narratives from the great smoothing that occurred during the Council of Laodicea and other early meetings, where several of these more supernatural books were sidelined by church fathers who found them too radical, too strange, or perhaps too difficult to explain to a growing empire. For a filmmaker who thrives on the visceral, the primal, and the shockingly visual, the Ethiopian Bible offers a goldmine of imagery that the traditional King James Version simply doesn't touch. It fills in the gaps of the silent years and the hidden realms. While the European tradition was busy sanitizing the faith to fit into cathedrals, the Ethiopian tradition was preserving a roadmap of a war that started in the heavens and ended in a tomb. Gibson's interest suggests he isn't looking for a Sunday school lesson. He's looking for the source code of the universe. He's looking for the raw, unedited account of why the Messiah had to descend into the dirt and the darkness in the first place. This version of the story doesn't just ask for your faith. It demands you acknowledge a reality where the supernatural is the only thing that is actually real. But what exactly did these lost pages say about the Son of Man? The harrowing of hell. If the Passion of the Christ was about the physical destruction of a man, the story Gibson is excavating now is about the metaphysical triumph of a God. The Western tradition often skips from the burial on Friday to the sunrise on Sunday, leaving a massive 3-day hole in the narrative. But in the Ethiopian tradition, those 72 hours are the most action-packed sequence in human history. This is the harrowing of hell, a concept that goes far beyond a simple rescue mission. According to the ancient texts preserved in Ethiopia, when Jesus breathed his last on the cross, his work wasn't finished. It was merely moving to a different theater of war. He didn't just lie dormant in a cold stone tomb. He descended into the heart of the earth, into the belly of Sheol, to settle an ancient debt and break the gates of brass. Gibson's vision for this segment of the story isn't just about floating spirits or metaphors. He is reportedly leaning into the visceral descriptions found in the Ethiopian broader canon, which detail Christ's entry into the realm of the dead as a conquering king. In these accounts, Sheol isn't just a place of waiting. It's a prison guarded by ancient entities, the very watchers and fallen spirits mentioned in the Book of Enoch. These are the beings who corrupted the world before the Great Flood, and they have held the souls of the patriarchs and the righteous in a state of celestial limbo for millennia. When Christ arrives, he doesn't come to negotiate. He comes to shatter the locks. The Ethiopian texts describe a scene of absolute spiritual upheaval, where the darkness of the abyss is literally incinerated by the light of the invading word. This untold story fills the gap that has left Western audiences wondering what exactly happened while the disciples were hiding in the upper room. Gibson is rumored to be treating this descent as a high-stakes heist and a military invasion rolled into one. The Ethiopian perspective provides the specific imagery of Christ binding the strong man, a reference to the Prince of the Abyss, and reclaiming the keys of death and Hades. This isn't the gentle Jesus of modern stained glass. This is the Lion of the tribe of Judah tearing through the fabric of the underworld. The Ethiopian Bible records the dialogue of the terrified spirits as they realize that the one they thought they had killed has followed them into their own stronghold to finish the job. It's a narrative of total reclamation that turns the tragedy of the crucifixion into the ultimate Trojan horse. For Gibson, this provides a visual canvas that is unlike anything ever put on film. Imagine a landscape where gravity doesn't apply, where time flows backward, and where the architecture is made of the memories of the lost. By using the Ethiopian texts as his primary source, he's able to bypass the cliches of fire and brimstone in favor of something much more haunting and alien. The harrowing is depicted as a cosmic restructuring. It's the moment the legal authority of death was revoked. The Ethiopian scrolls emphasize that when Jesus emerged from the abyss, he didn't come alone. He brought with him the captives, the souls who had been waiting since the dawn of time for this specific jailbreak. It is a story of a God who refuses to leave anyone behind, even in the deepest, darkest corners of the universe. This isn't just a theological footnote. It's the heartbeat of Gibson's most ambitious visual feast. He is crafting a journey through a world that exists on the edge of a nightmare, a place where the rules of physics are replaced by the rules of holiness. The Ethiopian Bible gives him the names of the gates, the rank of the demons, and the specific words of power used to command the shadows to flee. It transforms the resurrection from a quiet miracle into a loud, violent, and undeniable victory. Gibson is betting that the world is ready to see the side of the story that was deemed too intense for the Roman censors. This isn't just theology, it's the blueprint for Gibson's most ambitious visual feast, the acid trip narrative. To capture the magnitude of a god walking through the walls of reality, Mel Gibson has famously described this project as a metaphysical acid trip. This isn't just a provocative soundbite. It is a structural necessity when dealing with the Ethiopian Bible's version of the Christ story. The Western mind prefers its history like a straight line, point A to point B, cause and effect, birth, then death. But the ancient texts Gibson is mining don't care for the limitations of human time. They suggest that the events of the resurrection weren't just happening in a garden in Jerusalem, but were echoing across every dimension of the created order simultaneously. To film this, Gibson is reportedly abandoning the gritty, dirt-under-the-fingernails realism that defined The Passion in favor of a narrative structure that fractures and folds in on itself. reflecting a reality where the past, present, and eternal future collide in a single moment of divine power. The script isn't just following a man walking out of a cave. It is attempting to visualize the shattering of the space-time continuum. In the Ethiopian tradition, the resurrection is the moment the new creation begins, and that process is anything but linear. Gibson's approach involves massive VFX sequences that depict the fall of the angels as a parallel event to the rising of the sun. The screen becomes a kaleidoscope of spiritual history, where the viewer might see the ancient rebellion in the heavens mirrored in the silent, shaking shadows of the tomb. Using high frame rate IMAX cameras and cutting-edge visual technology, the film intends to overwhelm the senses. Forcing the audience to experience the same disorientation the disciples must have felt when their understanding of the world was ripped apart. It's a sensory assault designed to make the supernatural feel more tangible than the physical sets. This non-linear storytelling allows Gibson to weave the untold backstories of the Ethiopian canon directly into the 3 days of the resurrection. We aren't just watching a story, we are watching the mechanics of the universe being rewired. There are rumors of sequences where Christ moves through different layers of existence, the heavens, the earth, and the deep, all within the span of a single breath. This isn't just about flashy effects. It's about theological accuracy to the texts Gibson is honoring. The Ethiopian Book of Jubilees, for instance, provides a meticulous breakdown of the secret history of the world, and Gibson is using that prehistory to give weight to Christ's actions. Every step the Messiah takes in the present is a correction of a mistake made by an angel or a man thousands of years prior. It's a complex, multi-layered puzzle that requires the audience to pay attention to symbols as much as dialogue. By leaning into this acid trip aesthetic, Gibson is bypassing the traditional sword and sandal tropes that have made biblical epics feel stale or predictable. He is moving into the realm of high-concept science fiction and cosmic horror, but grounding it in the most ancient faith tradition on the planet. The budget reflects this ambition, with reports of massive expenditures on light-based effects that attempt to render the glory of the divine without falling into the trap of cheesy, glowing halos. Instead, the light in this film is portrayed as a physical force, a radiation that melts the stone of the tomb and terrifies the Roman guards not because it's pretty, but because it's powerful. It is a cinematic gamble that treats the gospel as something dangerous and unpredictable, a narrative that refuses to be tamed by a standard screenplay structure. This radical departure from his previous work shows a director who is no longer interested in just retelling a story we think we know. He is trying to show us the story through the eyes of the celestial beings who witnessed it. In this version of the script, the camera doesn't just sit on a tripod. It drifts through walls, looks through the eyes of demons, and captures the vibrations of a world that is literally coming apart at the seams so that it can be put back together. The Ethiopian Bible provided the map for this journey, but Gibson is building the vehicle to take us there. He is betting that the only way to truly understand the resurrection is to get lost in the mystery of it, to feel the same sense of holy awe and terrifying confusion that the ancient scribes felt when they put pen to parchment. To film the unfilmable, Gibson had to find a location that looked like the dawn of time, building the kingdom of God. To film the unfilmable, Mel Gibson returned to the legendary shadows of Cinecittà Studios in Rome, the same hallowed ground where he crafted the brutalist reality of the first film over 20 years ago. This isn't just a convenient choice of soundstage, it's a homecoming to the Hollywood on the Tiber, where the infrastructure of epic cinema is baked into the very walls. However, the scope this time around is vastly different. While the previous production focused on the claustrophobia of Roman cells and the dust of the Via Dolorosa, the set construction for this sequel has been described as a massive logistical undertaking requiring multiple theaters to house the otherworldly and metaphysical realms Christ traverses. Gibson isn't just building rooms, he is building entire dimensions. Reports from the set suggest that Cinecittà's new Studio 22 facility has served as the film's main hub, a massive space designed to accommodate the complex visual effects and physical sets required for a story that spends half its runtime in the afterlife. Beyond the controlled environments of Rome, Gibson has been seen scouting and filming across the rugged, lunar landscapes of southern Italy, specifically in the regions of Apulia and Basilicata. The ancient city of Matera, famous for its sassy cave dwellings, once again provides the primary face of Jerusalem, its white stone and ancient caves serving as the bridge between the human world and the divine. There is something primal about these locations. The soft volcanic tufa rock and the labyrinthine alleyways of Gravina, in Puglia, Ginosa, and Altamura look less like modern tourist destinations and more like a world that has been standing since the dawn of time. These ancient rural sites are essential for grounding the high-concept supernatural elements of the Ethiopian Bible. By placing the cosmic war of the resurrection against the backdrop of real weathered stone, Gibson ensures that the acid trip narrative feels like a tangible history rather than a digital hallucination. The production, which officially ramped up in late 2025 and is slated to wrap in June 2026, is pushing the boundaries of what independent cinema can achieve. This is no longer a $30 million indie gamble. It has ballooned into a two-part epic with a combined production budget estimated at roughly $250 million. The use of locations like the ghost town of Krakow and the rocky complexes of the Murgia Timoni viewpoint suggests a visual style that leans heavily on the dilapidated and rustic aesthetic to contrast with the blinding light of the divine. This is the intersection of high-end IMAX cinematography and practical locations that have remained unchanged for millennia. Gibson is essentially turning the heel of Italy into a living map of the biblical world, using the natural geography to represent the gateway between the living and the dead. The sheer scale of the operation, moving hundreds of crew members through these remote, rocky villages, reflects a director who is obsessed with authenticity, even when the subject matter is supernatural. Working with longtime collaborator Bruce Davey under the Icon Productions banner, Gibson has kept the script under a state of high-security lockdown. Yet, the physical evidence of the production tells its own story. Massive wooden gates constructed in Gravina, intricate stone carvings designed to look like the entrance to the abyss, and an 11-month shoot that treats every frame like a Renaissance painting. This isn't just a movie set, it is a construction site for a new kind of spiritual cinema. Gibson is betting that the physical weight of these Italian locations will give the Ethiopian narrative the gravity it deserves. He isn't just filming a story, he is trying to capture the vibration of a moment that changed the cosmos. But even with the perfect set, a ghost haunted the production: the passage of time, the face of Christ, de-aging, and the new cast. The most significant hurdle in returning to the story of the Christ after a 20-year hiatus was the undeniable reality of human aging. While the screenplay for The Resurrection picks up just 3 days after the crucifixion, the man who defined the role for a generation, Jim Caviezel, had aged 2 decades in the interim. For years, rumors swirled that Gibson would employ the high-cost de-aging technology seen in films like The Irishman to allow Caviezel to reprise the role. Caviezel himself expressed a deep desire to return, even stating in early 2025 that he was preparing for a digital transformation that would make him look exactly as he did in the original 2004 production. However, as the production moved into the high-stakes environment of late 2025, the logistical and financial reality of digital youth proved too steep even for a $100 million budget. In a move that shocked many fans but reflected Gibson's commitment to a visceral, practical aesthetic, the decision was made to completely recast the film. Replacing a figure as iconic as Caviezel's Christ was not a task taken lightly. The role eventually went to Finnish actor Jaakko Otonen, a choice that signals a shift toward a more otherworldly and rugged portrayal. Otonen, known for his intense performances in The Last Kingdom and Vikings, Valhalla brings a physical presence that aligns with the warrior messiah depicted in the Ethiopian broader canon. This wasn't just about saving money on CG1, it was about a narrative reset. By casting a new face, Gibson is able to move away from the suffering servant imagery of the first film and lean into the conquering king who descends into the abyss. The recasting didn't stop with Jesus. The entire core ensemble was replaced to maintain a consistent visual age across the board. Mariella Garriga stepped into the role of Mary Magdalene, replacing Monica Bellucci, while Kasia Smutniak took over as Mary, the mother of Jesus, replacing Maya Morgenstern. Pierluigi Passino was cast as Peter, and Riccardo Scamarcio took on the role of Pontius Pilate. Even the legendary Rupert Everett joined the cast in a secret role. Some speculate as the patriarch Abraham or a celestial being within the Ethiopian narrative. This total turnover of the cast has sparked intense debate among the faithful, with some viewing it as a reboot rather than a direct sequel. Yet, for Gibson, the story itself is the star. He is seeking to reach a new generation of viewers who may not have been born when the first film was released, using fresh faces to convey an ancient mystery. This decision underscores the thematic shift of the film. While The Passion was a meditation on physical endurance and the weight of human sin, The Resurrection is a metaphysical exploration of the divine nature. Otanen's portrayal is expected to be less about the agony of the flesh and more about the authority of the spirit. The Ethiopian texts describe a Christ who radiates a light so intense it blinds the Roman guards and terrifies the demons of Sheol, a performance that requires a certain raw, untapped energy that a new actor can uniquely provide. Gibson is betting that the audience's emotional connection to the story will transcend their attachment to a specific actor's face. Changing the face of Jesus was a risk, but the story being told was even riskier. The cosmic conflict, angels, demons, and the divine. So why is Mel Gibson looking at the Ethiopian Bible? He wants everyone to understand the specific type of war he is trying to film. In the Western canon, the battle between good and evil is often portrayed as a moral struggle or a whisper in the ear. But in the Ethiopian texts, particularly the Book of Enoch, it is a literal, grinding, physical conflict between distinct classes of celestial beings. The script for The Resurrection reportedly treats the 3 days in the tomb as the climax of a divine coup d'etat. Gibson is moving away from the silent Satan of the first film, the androgynous, creepy figure who lurked in the shadows of the Via Dolorosa, and into a world where the demonic is loud, organized, and terrifyingly powerful. This isn't just about one soul, it's about the liberation of the planet from an ancient, illegal occupation by fallen entities who have been pulling the strings of history since before the flood. The Ethiopian Bible provides the specific intel for this conflict. While the Western Bible briefly mentions spirits in prison, the Ethiopian scrolls name names. They describe the Watchers, the high-ranking angels who abandoned their stations to corrupt humanity, and their offspring, the Nephilim. Gibson is allegedly weaving these figures into the acid trip narrative, showing that Christ's death wasn't a defeat, but a tactical entry into the enemy's command center. The film portrays the descent into Sheol as a scene of absolute spiritual chaos. Christ doesn't just walk through the gates of the abyss, he dismantles them. The Ethiopian tradition describes the Messiah as a being of fire and light, a presence so overwhelming that the hierarchy of hell literally disintegrates in his presence. This is the cosmic Christ, a figure of terrifying authority who doesn't just offer forgiveness, but demands the total surrender of every dark power in existence. This focus on spiritual warfare changes the stakes of the resurrection entirely. In Gibson's script, the empty tomb is the evidence of a successful military operation. The Untold story includes the moment the ancient fallen angels realize that their plan to kill the Son of Man was actually the trap that led to their own destruction. Reports suggest that the film includes sequences of the fall of the angels mirrored against the rising of the sun, a nonlinear visual technique that shows the beginning of the rebellion and its ultimate end happening simultaneously. By using the Ethiopian Bible as a source, Gibson is able to depict the resurrection as a victory over the dragon, a motif that is central to the Book of Revelation, but find its foundational roots in the Enochian texts preserved in Ethiopia. The visual representation of these demons and angels is where Gibson is truly breaking new ground. Eschewing the red-skinned, horned caricatures of medieval art, the film leans into the descriptions found in the Ethiopian broader canon. Beings of multicolored light, terrifying living wheels covered in eyes, and spirits that look like shifting smoke. These are entities that exist outside of human biology, and Gibson is using cutting-edge VFX to make them feel truly alien. The conflict isn't just a fistfight, it's a clash of fundamental forces. When Christ confronts these beings in the heart of the earth, the film treats it as a reality-warping event, where the very laws of physics begin to fail. It's a vision of the gospel that is both ancient and avant-garde, a story that suggests our world is merely the surface of a much deeper, much more dangerous ocean. Ultimately, this cosmic conflict serves to highlight the true meaning of the title. The resurrection isn't just the revival of a body, it is the reboot of the universe. The Ethiopian Bible records that when Christ rose, he fundamentally changed the nature of the soul and its relationship to the heavens. Gibson is capturing that shift. The moment the fire returned to separate the faithful from the performances, and the moment the light of the Creator reclaimed its territory. It is a narrative of total reclamation that turns the tragedy of the crucifixion into the ultimate victory of light over darkness. Will modern audiences accept a Bible story that feels more like a cosmic war film, a sequel to history? Gibson is not just making a movie, he is attempting to film a spiritual earthquake. By reaching across the globe to the high-altitude monasteries of Ethiopia, he has bypassed the sanitized, Europeanized versions of the gospel to find something much more ancient, rugged, and dangerous. The resurrection of the Christ is shaping up to be the ultimate test of whether modern audiences are ready to confront the weirdness of the divine. The Ethiopian Bible reminds us that the story of Jesus is not a quiet, moral fable, but a violent, cosmic reclamation project. It is a narrative that involves the entire hierarchy of the heavens and the deepest pits of the abyss. For Gibson, this film is the culmination of a lifelong obsession with the intersection of the visceral and the holy, a project that treats faith not as a comfort, but as a confrontation with reality. The legacy of this film will likely be measured by its ability to bridge the gap between the historical and the metaphysical. By choosing the Ethiopian broader canon as his roadmap, Gibson has effectively expanded the cinematic universe of the Bible, inviting viewers into a world where angels are warriors, hell is a high-security prison, and the resurrection is a military victory. This isn't just about the 3 days in the tomb, it is about the untold history of a war that has been raging since the dawn of time. Gibson's gamble, using a new cast, a massive budget, and a non-linear acid trip structure, is a declaration that the story of Christ is too big for a single genre or a single perspective. As the film approaches its 2026 release, the world waits to see if this sequel to history can capture the same lightning in a bottle that The Passion did over 2 decades ago. Regardless of the box office numbers, Gibson has already succeeded in doing something remarkable. He has brought the hidden treasures of the Ethiopian church into the global conversation. He has reminded us that there are still mysteries in the ancient world waiting to be excavated, and that sometimes the most revolutionary thing a filmmaker can do is look backward to the very beginning. The story of Jesus, as told through the 81 books of Ethiopia, is a story of total victory, and Gibson is betting everything that we are finally ready to see it. If you want to stay ahead of the curve on the untold stories of history and the future of cinema, make sure to hit that subscribe button.